Hi guys, my name is Barry and welcome back to the channel. I'm going to talk about The Iron Claw today. I don't even consider this video a movie review because I'm not going to structure this video like a typical movie review. And I think the reason is the movie's been out for 2 months now in the US and other countries, and I'm really disappointed that we didn't get to see it until February in the UK. So we've seen it too late. Everybody's already done a review for it, and you're not really going to come to my channel to watch a review for a film where you probably spent 2 months watching reviews on other channels, which is absolutely fair enough. But I just want to talk about it today because the movie had a massive impact on me even before I saw the film. Now, I was a huge fan of the WWF back in the 80s and the 90s, and I still remember to this day, back in the late 80s, on my brother's black and white TV, watching primetime wrestling with Vince McMahon. That's how it all began for me. Primetime wrestling, it was called. Luckily for me and other people my age, wrestling just took off massively in the early 90s or the late 80s, for example. We already had WrestleMania 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. So wrestling was becoming a big thing. And by the early 90s, it was peak. It was huge. You had Macho Man, The Ultimate Warrior, Hulk Hogan, Shawn Michaels, Legion of Doom. You had all of these massive characters in wrestling that you probably don't see today. Now, I'm not a big wrestling fan anymore. I stopped watching wrestling by the end of 1999. I think another tragedy of Owen Hart back in 99 was what made me stop watching wrestling, which maybe we can talk about another day. But it's about the Iron Claw today. Now, I didn't know any of the Von Erichs before watching this film. The only one I knew about was obviously the Texas Tornado, and I didn't even know the Texas Tornado as Kevin Von Erich. I just knew him as the Texas Tornado because I watched the WWF. If I was from Texas, then I would probably know who he was more. But being from the UK, only knew him as the Texas Tornado because we had mainstream WWF at the time, and that was it. Before watching the movie, I knew about the Von Erichs because I read about them, but I didn't know to the extent of what I was about to see. I knew about the Texas Tornado himself. I knew what happened to him before it with his leg or his foot, and I knew there was tragedy in the family, but I didn't know to the extent of what I was about to see. Watching the movie, I was like, oh my God. Now, when the movie was announced, like 2 years ago almost now, it was announced in 2022, I was invested in it already because I wanted to know more about the Von Erich family because they are a big family, and I wanted to know how that played out. Now, I know that a lot of people have an issue with the film in the sense that they left out a brother, Chris, and I didn't know they left out that brother. I knew about them having brothers, I knew about the tragedy, but after I watched the movie, I went straight online to research it myself and to find out that they had another brother called Chris who also had issues, who his story itself could make a movie, and then he also took his own life too. I was like, why didn't they put that into the movie? A movie about brothers, why would they not include it? But I gave myself a bit of time to think about it, and I was like, do you know what? There was enough tragedy. It would be rinse and repeat. As disrespectful as that sounds, it would be almost like rinse and repeat. So I understand why they didn't want to do that, because it was a dramatization at the end of the day. It wasn't true facts. It was based and inspired by the true story. So they have to omit some things in order to make a movie flow. It's a movie at the end of the day. So taking one tragedy out, I don't think that was a bad decision now, thinking about it. And that being Chris, who wasn't involved in the wrestling as much as the rest of the boys, then he was the one to remove, and that was just unfortunate. When it comes to siblings, I'm part of a 4. I've got 2 brothers and I've got a big sister. My big brother is 10 years older than me. My little brother is 7 years younger than me, and my big sister is 2 years older than me. So there's quite a gap between us all, apart from me and my sister. And when we were growing up, we were very close, especially when we were watching wrestling. Me and my sister, my wee brother. My big brother didn't watch it as much because he was a lot older, but we watched wrestling growing up, and we watched it as a unit because we loved it together. Even after it, we would wrestle. That's what you done back in the late 80s and the early 90s. Obviously, my little brother was born in 1990, so he didn't get introduced to wrestling until later on in the mid-90s, but he still watched it with us anyway. So we had a bond And we still have a bond, obviously, because we're family, but we had that bond. I felt like we had that bond that the Von Erichs had in the movie. So watching the film and seeing their bond, was wonderful to see. Knowing that there was going to be tragedy later on, again, I didn't know the extent of the tragedy, but knowing there was going to be that tragedy. Now, seeing Zac Efron straight from the start talking about having a little brother who was 5 or 6 and he died, and him as a young kid trying to process that. How do you process that? And that's just, from that moment on, I don't know about you guys, but I connected to Kevin Von Erich, Zac Efron's character. And every character that we get introduced to, you feel connected to him straight away. You feel connected to Kerry because he was done dirty because he wasn't able to compete in the Olympics. They had to take him out. And then his dad forced him in. He didn't force him, but he forced him without forcing him into this wrestling that you didn't think, did he really want to do it? And then he's telling Mike that he needs to buff up and he needs to become a wrestler as well. But Mike's like, well, I want to be a musician. And they're not interested in what he wants. The dad, Fritz, is only interested in what he wants, what he failed at, he wants his kids to succeed at. And then you've got David as well, who he's not the face of the family, but he's doing the best. He's the tallest, and Fritz is making them all compete against each other. And I think at times they felt like they had to compete, but when the dad wasn't there, they were all a unit. They were all this strong family. Now, obviously, we don't know what happened with Chris because Chris wasn't involved in the film. But this was the 4 brothers that we had left because little Jack Jr. died as a kid. So we're going on this journey with these 4 boys and the dad all the way through the movie. The mum's there as well. She doesn't play a big role, but it looks like she's stern, but she doesn't really want to get involved either. She just sits back and stays quiet. One thing that the dad always does is tells them not to show emotion. So whenever there's a death in the family, he's like, don't cry. Men don't cry. And you're like, what? This film is more about the brothers, the family dynamic than it is wrestling. Wrestling's obviously plays a big part, but it's not the main focus. The main focus is how these boys, how this family deals with tragedy after tragedy after tragedy, and it's just so hard to watch. I think with each tragedy in this film, it just breaks you that a little bit more and that little bit more until the very end. And when the moment that Kevin died and Kerry died, and Kevin put him on the table. And I don't know, that this was a dream sequence where we see Kerry with his 2 feet again and he goes to meet his other brothers who are dead. It seems like it's supposed to be the afterlife. I'm not too sure. I think that scene was a little on the nose. It was absolutely powerful. It was beautiful and I was crying all the way through it. But I don't know what kind of message that sends, depending on what the director's intention was with that. Was that Kerry's image of him going to heaven? Or was that Kevin's image of where he hopes that Kerry's going with his brothers? I'm not too sure. But I don't know what kind of message that sends out. However the message is, it was a stunning scene. And after that scene finished, we've got 1 brother left. That's it. We've got 1 brother. And it shows how he's dealing with that. Now, at face value, he's dealing with it. But when he's himself, he's not dealing with this. And the end of the film, I thought that part with Kerry was sad, but just seeing him sitting alone, but watching his kids, he's got a new generation there, but he's watching his kids play with each other and he's crying. He wasn't allowed to cry this whole time his dad was around, but he's crying now. He's letting it all out. And then when his kids ask him why he's crying, he's saying, oh, it's fine, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I used to be a brother. This film's going to hit people differently. I'm a brother. I loved wrestling when I was younger, and I loved the Texas Tornado. Texas Tornado was great, and to think that he was wrestling to the highest level as well. He was wrestling with 1 foot, and the pain that he probably went through just to try and please his dad or try and prove something to himself that he's not a failure. But at the same time, he's already got brothers who have already died. He had a brother that died at 6 years old. He had David, who died in the 80s. He had Mike, who died in the 80s. He had Chris, who died in 1991, who obviously isn't in the film, but The real Texas Tornado, the real Kevin Von Erich, had these tragedies in his family, and he's gone into a wrestling ring with one foot, trying to hide the fact that he's disabled. Then he's got one foot. And then you've got Kevin, who's lost them all. He's himself now. He's lost everybody. He's even lost his dad. They didn't do this in the film, but his dad had brain cancer, and he had brain cancer at the time that Kerry died, and he even held a gun to Kevin's head, threatening to shoot Kevin in real life. They didn't put that into the film because, again, that might have been a little bit too heavy-handed. And finding out that Fritz was dying with brain cancer in the film, when that credits scene come up with Zac Efron, Kevin crying, and then that song comes on as well, oh my God. Like I said, this film's going to hit people differently. And because I'm a brother, because I like the wrestling, this film just hit me so hard. And it was the saddest film I've ever seen. After the film ended, and this is no joke, guys, I even put it online, I cried for 30 minutes, solid. Cried. Like, not even tears, physically and vocally crying for 30 minutes. I couldn't get it. It's been a week now, and I still can't get this film out of my head. I put on the song last night on YouTube that played at the end of the film. I just broke down again. After all that, though, to find out that this film was snubbed to the high heavens by the Academy, I can't believe it. Now, I'm not being over-exaggerative here, guys, but this film should have been nominated for Best Director, Best Screenplay, Best Actor, Best Supporting Actor, Best Costume Design, Best Cinematography, Best Original Soundtrack, or Best Original Song, sorry. At least 7 nominations this should have got, and probably extra ones that are the lower down categories. I would say at least 7 snubs that this film got for the Oscars, and I don't understand. Now, people do say, well, it was put out too late, or A24 didn't advertise it enough, they didn't take it around the circuits enough. Who cares? It qualified for the Oscars for 2024. It came out in time. Anybody at the Academy could have watched this movie. I'm not part of the Academy, and I watched it. I'm not part of the Academy, and I knew about it 1.5 years ago. So somebody at the Academy must have known about it. There would have definitely been rumblings for this film by the Academy, and I'm pretty sure they watched the movie before the ballot went in. I'm pretty sure they watched the movie before they nominated for what was put out there. But this is by far the greatest movie of 2023. I've not even done a top movies of 2023. I've done a top horror ones, but this one blows Oppenheimer out of the water in every aspect possible. This is the best film of 2023, and I'll go out on a limb here and say it's one of the best movies over the last decade. It's that good. The film is so emotional. It's the saddest film I've ever seen in my life. I cry a week later about this. Sorry, I'm Scottish. I'm saying later. I cry a week later thinking about the film, and that's how much it got to me. I don't even watch wrestling anymore, but after watching that, I started watching reruns of old WWF matches, obviously featuring the Texas Tornado, but I was watching old matches. I watched Shawn Michaels kicking Marta Jannetty through the barbershop window, which was an iconic moment when I watched it. I watched Ultimate Warrior fighting Hulk Hogan in one of the most epic matches of all time. I even started watching Dark Side of the Ring, which was dark, very dark. I watched the Von Erichs one straight after the Iron Claw, and that's how I found out a bit more of the information. And then I watched the Macho Man episode, and I'm going to start watching more. But wrestling back then, guys, whoa, it was huge to me. It was my life back then. And now it's nothing to me. I don't watch wrestling anymore at all. I know about some of the main guys, CM Punk or things like that, but they're nothing compared to the golden era. That was the best. And then watching the Iron Claw, it just brought it all back. It brought back memories of me spending time with my family. And I think that's what it's supposed to do, because it's a movie about family, and it brought family memories back to me that I forgot I had. And I'm going to stop it there. If you haven't seen the Iron Claw, don't know where you've been, but if you haven't seen the Iron Claw, you have to see it. It's such an amazing experience. Amazing. Maybe that's the wrong choice of words. It's an experience watching the film, guys. You won't regret watching it. It's amazing.
Meeting adjourned.
I'll be right back.
What are you waiting for, huh?
Coming to get you, Barbara.
Ever played Skin the Cat?
Someone's in the